I've received a copy of this lovely little book. It's called Tóchar, Walking Ireland's Ancient Pilgrim Paths by Darach MacDonald. It's basically, he's sort of what he describes. He describes himself as a struggling a la carte Irish Catholic, and he retraces some of the ancient pilgrim routes of Ireland, which would include, the Patrick's Purgatory and, the old Tóchar Pádraig up to the Reek in Mayo, and he goes to places like Faughart, where St. Bridget was venerated. But what I found very interesting about the introduction to this book is that he really sets the scene in terms of where we are at the moment. I've touched on these things in Newgrange Monument Immortality, this great sort of spiritual crisis that Ireland finds itself in, which is tied in with an economic and political crisis. And I think that in a couple of passages of this book he really kind of he hits the nail on the head quite nicely. So I wanted to just read a couple of just very short passages to give you a flavour of it, and hope that that interests you in going off and purchasing it. I haven't actually read the whole book yet, but I've been dipping in and out of it, and I'm finding it very, very interesting. Certainly as somebody who's kind of left the whole Catholic thing behind, I can see that pilgrimage isn't necessarily a Catholic thing, and that it still has a place in today's world and can help people enormously. But you'll know that if you've read Newgrange Monument Immortality, that I very much see the rise of interest in ancient spirituality to be connected with this kind of falling away from the traditional church. And now this is from the introduction to Tóchar. We live in a sceptical world, a place where the rituals and practices of our past are forgotten, the places where we performed them neglected. Even for those who profess Christianity, fundamental faith crumbles in the face of scandal, duplicity, and betrayal by those once trusted as ministers of Christ. As we despair of institutional religion, most have only sketchy memories and scant knowledge of the faith that sustained previous generations in the darkest times. Our beliefs and practices were corralled into empty rituals at prescribed places, carefully controlled by the hierarchical, repressive and sex-obsessed Catholic Church. For many of my generation and younger, a deep sense of loss compounds our helplessness in the face of material and spiritual collapse. Perhaps we have experienced this most in Ireland, a land where our most sacred places of pilgrimage have a spiritual significance that echoes back to pre-Christian beliefs. For centuries and millennia, we persisted in visiting these places in time-honoured rituals, even against the strictures of an authoritarian church. Yet in modern times, the joy and liberation of rebirth inherent in time-honoured pilgrimage has been traded for dour repression at approved Marian shrines, places that rob us of spontaneity and the fundamental spiritual resonance of ancient traditions. And I love that. I think that very much sums up where we are at the moment. There's another little passage here from later on, on page 45, just to, I suppose, set the tone as to what sort of people are going on pilgrimages today, because they mightn't be necessarily the sort of people that you would expect. Going to Station Island, I expected to encounter people who might otherwise be religious standoffs, the Hail Marys and Holy Joes who want to do the required penance and a bit extra. Perhaps they were there, but those I met were, without exception, people with real lives, facing all the challenges and problems that brings. People with big hearts who come to support the needs and wants of others. People with their own needs and wants who come to search for solutions within themselves. They are people with failed or troubled relationships, people with addictions or living with addicts. Some have a troubled past, and all have an uncertain future. Most are believers, yet many others are searching for something to believe in. Each of these pilgrims can derive as much and more from this penitential exercise as those who come year in, year out to purge the flesh and renounce the world of the devil. All come with individual motives for partaking in this ancient 3-day pilgrimage, and over the course of 3 days, they often find answers within themselves. Yes, it is worth every moment and every painful step along the way. And that is the wonderful work of Darach MacDonald, Tóchar, Walking Ireland's Ancient Pilgrim Paths, and that's by New Island.